All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast. Now, when you think about the NBA, and it's been around for 75 years and now, so it's to me, in my opinion, it's getting back to their origins because for about a decade or so, we've seen the league being dominated by perimeter basketball. When you think about perimeter basketball, some of the things that come to mind are the three-point shooting of Steph Curry and Klay Thompson with the Golden State Warriors, the dominance of LeBron James, the scoring ability of James Harden, and the athleticism of Russell Westbrook are just some things to think about. That I know Westbrook is not a perimeter scorer, but he is a guard. But recently, we're seeing the NBA return to its roots, which is big man basketball. And I say that because when the Lakers won their championship in 2020, Anthony Davis played a big part in that as he averaged nearly 28 points and 10 rebounds in the finals that year against the Miami Heat. Last year in the NBA Finals, we saw the Milwaukee Bucks win the title. And in doing so, Giannis Antetokounmpo averaged more than 35 points and 13 rebounds in the finals for the Bucks as they played big man basketball to beat the Phoenix Suns. Now, Giannis was named the MVP in both 2019 and 2020, while Nikola Jokic of the Denver Nuggets took home the award last year. And the way things are shaping up this year, this could be the first time in more than 40 years that the NBA's MVP award went to a power forward or a center in 4 consecutive years. It's hard to believe, but that is a possibility. I'm joined once again by Cal One to God. Cal, what's
What's up?
going on,
What's
my
going
man?
on, good brother?
What do
Listen,
you think about how things are changing in the NBA for more of a perimeter game to bringing a big man back on the scene?
well, I'll tell you, it's evolution of basketball, and I've watched it several different times over the years, and it's evolving again. So now, you got guys, especially big men in the past, rebounding and defense and scoring around the basket. Take a guy like Matumbo, actually reminds me of a guy like Rudy Gobert. So now we're moving on from that type of thing to now you got a guy like Nikola Jokic that he's going 26, 13, and 7. In my opinion, he is the best center in the league, pound for pound. We're talking about what he does all the way around. He in defensively, you know, the younger guys tend to be a little bit more defensive minded, but he's one of them that just has a full package. I got Joelle Embiid second at 29, 11, and 4. All right. He's efficient. He probably would average more points, if he went to the basket a little bit more, but he's dominated probably the last month and a half for the NBA. And then you got guys like Karl Anthony Towns, he's at 24, 9, and 4. Vucevic is 18, 11, and 3. And you got DeAndre Ayton and Bam Adebayo, guys like that, bringing up the rear. The game has definitely changed. These guys are a lot more athletic. They get more out of their athleticism. They're not being told only you can only do this, which is what I believe a lot of guys were told in the past. So you didn't see guys evolve into the way guys game. You see a guy 7 foot that's going to bring up the basketball. You're never going to see David Robinson bring up the basketball unless he has to. Yet and so still, with all this domination, Shaq, for all he was dominant, he could not bring up the basketball consistently. He's not going to hit a three. He's not going to make that pass without him being in the post already to pass out the post. We talk about initiating offense. This is the difference. This is just a different thing. And it's called evolution. So all them old school people out there, all y'all old heads, gonna have to get with the change.
Well, I think, it's a good blend. And I say that because, everybody's fallen in love, or most people rather, they've fallen in love with the 3-point shot in the NBA. And, it's trickled down to college, high school, AAU, you name it. But the thing is this, and you still see it, it's that just because somebody's wide open behind the 3-point line doesn't necessarily mean that it's an efficient shot. I've seen guys bring the ball up right away, and as soon as they get over half court, they're gunning. And I mean, at the end of the day, basketball, its roots go back to ball movement. You have to move that
Right.
basketball around. And if you have a big, give him an opportunity in the post. Now, that's not to say that, as a big man, you can't go out there and, add some different aspects to your game, a mid-range shot, a three-point shot.
Right.
But the
Exactly.
but the
Yeah.
thing is like, and it's not just the bigs, it's players in general. If you're up there taking 10 3-point shots and you've only made one or you haven't made any, obviously it's trying to do something else. Get to the basket, try to, pass, defend, do other things to help, contribute for your team. And some people unfortunately have fallen in love with the 3-point shot. And I'm not, totally against the bigs doing it. I mean, a guy like Jokic, I really respect his offensive game. For my money, sometimes, he falls in love with that 3-point shot. And the same thing could be said for Carl Anthony Towns. Now, in recent years, we've seen AD, Giannis, and Embiid, do the same thing as far as taking too many threes. And in recent years, we've seen AD cut down on them. We've seen Embiid cut down on them. And we've seen Giannis cut down on them as well. Because for my money, from 15 feet and in, there's nobody in the league that can stop Joel Embiid. There's nobody in the league that can stop Giannis. AD is a monster when healthy, close to the basket. And the thing is like you have to play to your strengths. And I think when you
Right.
start
Right.
going out there and camping out by the 3-point line, you're doing more of a detriment to your team than you are any good. But I'm looking at it like this because from 1965 to 1980, we saw the likes of Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, Kareem routinely win the MVP award. Of course, and of course they were bigs. Now the 1980s they belonged to Larry and Magic as they combined to win the award 6 times. The 90s, of course, belonged to Michael Jordan because he won 4 of his 5 MVPs during that decade. However, it's not to say that we didn't see big men, getting recognized during that era. The great Moses Malone won the MVP award twice in the 80s. The 90s, we saw Hakeem get one,
That's right.
D Rob got one, and Karl Malone, got 2 during the 90s. And then in the 2000s, Shaq got his only MVP. Tim Duncan got 2. KG got 1, and then Dirk got 1 as well. But to me, we're getting back to that big man ball,
Yeah.
and it's to me, I think it's a good thing for the NBA. I really do.
I'm in agreement with that because I like the hybrid players, but I also like the player that goes to their strengths. I think Giannis, I don't know what to consider Giannis, whether he's a center or a power forward. Because I looked around in the listings to see what he was because I wanted to talk about him, but he's listed.
Well, I mean, listen, he's the Greek freak for a reason. That's the whole thing to it. I mean, sometimes he could be a power forward, sometimes he could be a center. Uh,
Like
but
a
you
real true big man.
right.
He did last year, and he earned his MVPs and whatever accolades he got, or whatever he brought to Milwaukee. Uh, the man can flat out play, and I think, like you said, in him cutting down, those long shots and getting closer to the basket and dealing with their strengths, something that these guys are too big, and the basket is literally right there for you to take a more difficult shot than the one you need to take. So again, that goes back to coaching and who are your coaches and what are they telling you? So obviously, Doc Rivers, whatever he's telling Joel Embiid, it's working because Joel Embiid has been the best player in the league, not the best center over the last month and a half. Easy. I mean, I haven't seen a better player. Now, like I said at the beginning of the telecast, who I thought was the best player was Jokic because I think he does more than all of them. The closest player to Jokic, I would say, is definitely Giannis, and Giannis is a lot tougher. He brings a sense of toughness to what he does because Giannis will run you over. Joel Embiid could be a complete monster. He's really, really, really close. I had been, kind of critical of him being in shape.
No, with Embiid, you know what? He has I give him a ton of credit for the season because we saw the performance that he
I like to say,
had.
I like him.
No, no,
Yeah.
listen. I mean, you look at the performance that he had the other night against Milwaukee, and in that big game. it actually put him and propelled him past Giannis for the points lead because
He
coming into
did,
that
right.
game, yeah,
Right.
coming into that game, Giannis was averaging 29.4, Embiid was averaging 29.3. Now Embiid is averaging 29.6, and to Embiid's credit, he's been dealing with a ton of distractions this year. He got COVID,
I agree. Yes.
and then on
Yes.
top of that, the whole thing with Ben Simmons, and those questions had begun, in training camp in essence. And now, okay, let's see how he and James Harden are going to play together when James Harden, quote unquote, gets healthy. That's a whole nother topic for another day. But you have to give him credit for that. Giannis, you look at Giannis, he hasn't had his full squad. I mean, Brook Lopez got hurt.
Right.
Granted,
That's true.
you still got Drew Holiday, you still got Bobby Portis, and of course Chris Middleton. But the thing is with the Bucks bigs, all three of them that I mentioned, because Chris Middleton 6'11, Bobby Portis is 7 feet, or 6'10 rather. All of those guys, they bring different styles of play to the game. You know what I mean? And then of course, once you add Nikola Jokic to the aspect, this man, you look at what he's doing, not only for his points, but his rebounds and his assists. And he gets the people involved around him and he makes them better. And I think this season is a prime example of that because they still have not gotten Jamal Murray back. And then
Right.
on top of that, Michael Porter Jr. in the back, he's probably not going to play again either this season. So this is a hand that the Nuggets have been dealt with.
Right.
Aaron Gordon, as showing more that he's just a role player as he's trying to play off of Nikola Jokic. But honestly, if the Nuggets didn't have Nikola Jokic darn near putting up a triple double every night, where would they be? But then you look at Giannis, he makes a compelling case as well, as does Embiid. And that's not to take away from two other guys that are having tremendous seasons that definitely are going to be in the MVP conversation. That's DeMar DeRozan of the Chicago Bulls
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
and John Morant of the Memphis Grizzlies.
Yes.
But and
Hmm.
they're having tremendous seasons. But to me, I think it's going to be a toss up between Embiid, Giannis, and Jokic for the award. Okay, we're gonna get Cal back in a moment, but just getting back to these three guys, and you look at what they bring to the table. I'm talking about Jokic. Jokic is averaging 26 points, almost 14 boards, and
That's right.
almost 8 assists.
That's right.
Giannis, 29.4 a game. He's grabbing more than 11 boards, dishing out 6 assists. Embiid right now, 29.6, 11 boards. And because of that win the other night, the Sixers are now tied with the Bucks and Cavs for third place in the East. And I think that's going to be a
That's correct.
battle
That's correct.
throughout those with those two for the remainder of the season, not only in the MVP balloting, but also in the standings to try to win this award or have the better record rather in the Eastern Conference. Callie, with me, man? Okay, I'm gonna come back to Cal in a moment, but like the thing is like we're seeing the bigs who have added the 3-point shot to their arsenal. And like I said, I don't have a problem with it. But again, at the end of the day, there's nobody who could stop these guys when they're close to the basket, And then on top of that, with Jokic, I think Jokic has the advantage scoring wise over both Embiid and Giannis from the standpoint that he has a good mid range game as well.
He
Uh,
does.
it's going to be a 3-man race. So I mean, honestly, in my opinion, it's a toss up three for either one of them, man.
It can happen. I just want to see really good basketball and appreciate skill, which these guys that we're talking about, they're making me want to watch basketball again the way I used to. They're mixing up power, finesse, you know what I'm saying, and the ability to be smart, because you got to be a smart basketball player. And a lot of it is called knowing your person.
Yeah, it's all about playing to your strengths.
And I think these guys in Philly, Milwaukee, Denver, they know their team. And I think the guys that are on their teams have accepted their roles. And I think it's easier to play when everybody knows what they're supposed to do and when you're supposed to give Embiid the ball and when you're supposed to let Jokic take over. You gotta know, you gotta have a sense And that comes from, having a chance to play together. And like you said earlier, the Milwaukee Bucks haven't had their full team together, but Giannis, he just stayed in there. He played. Now all of a sudden you're starting to see, them coming together. You start to see these teams coming together. Like you said, Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. being missing.
Yeah, no, it definitely adds to it.
It's
And
like you said earlier, it goes to show your best players being with all that he can be.
yeah, and I mean, for me, I look at Giannis, I look at Jokic, I look even, Bam Adebayo, who you
I like
mentioned,
Bam too. Yeah,
you
you
know,
mentioned him.
as well as Joelle Embiid. To me, they all have something in common, and that is they are playing for organizations that allowed them to develop. Because, too often, especially in this era of basketball, what we've seen is teams draft a big, and then if that big is not dominant early on, they give up on them, and
Right.
then they try to focus on being a perimeter team. I've said it before, and I will say it again right now. Sports is a copycat leagues, regardless of whatever league that you're playing in. If something works for one team, everybody else is going to try to figure it out and do it for themselves. My point is this: we saw the Golden State Warriors win 3 titles in 5 years with their brand of basketball, and a lot of people jumped on that bandwagon. But when the Warriors were winning those titles, granted, two of them were with Kevin Durant,
Right.
they had three of the better perimeter shooters of all time, not just of this era, of all
Right.
time. And
Yeah.
Steph, Clay, and KD, and of course you had a forward in a Draymond who was a darn good facilitator. That's what made it work. And also,
Absolutely. One of
also
the
the
best
war.
to do it from
Right,
that standpoint.
right. Every team out there in the NBA does not have that personnel. And still, teams are trying to go out there and win that brand of basketball. And if you look in recent years, that brand of basketball is fading out. And I say that because, looking at the Warriors, they are hopeful to have Draymond back for their second half run. But with that said, I'm not sure if their brand of basketball is still going to work the deeper that you go into the postseason. Now, with that said, you have to allow and work with your guys in order for them to develop at the NBA level, especially in the case of a Carl Anthony Towns, especially in the case of a Bam Adebayo, especially in the case of a Joel Embiid, where these guys were brought into the NBA after their freshman years in college. You're coming in, you're playing against grown men. It takes time to develop. I go
It
back,
does.
I go back more than 30 years ago when Patrick Ewing first came into the NBA with the Knicks, first overall pick. And if you look at Patrick's college career, he was one of the
One of
better
the best players I've ever seen.
of all time. Okay. Now, with that said, Patrick was athletic, rebound, block shot, score, you name it. But when Patrick came into the NBA and his first game against Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for the Lakers, Kareem took him to school. There was nothing that Patrick was accustomed to doing that was working at either end of the court that was able
Right.
to work against Kareem. And that's a 4-year player coming from college playing in the NBA. So obviously it's going to be a lot different for a guy who only spent 1 year on campus trying to adjust to playing against grown men in the NBA. So with that said, you have to take time. You have to be patient with these guys. And of course, with Giannis was a project. He was a 15th overall pick when he was drafted by Milwaukee. Nikola Jokic was a second round pick. And coincidentally, Nikola Jokic was taken in the same draft class as Aaron Gordon, his teammate who is now playing off of him. Of course, Gordon was taken 4th overall after his freshman year at Arizona by the Orlando Magic. But my point is, you have to, it takes time. And you look at Jokic, he got better and better each season until he became an
Right.
all-star in the
And he took
NBA.
time too. You're right.
And it's the same thing for Giannis. And that, to me, is a credit to these organizations because some of these organizations, if you're not a star player right away, they kick you to the curb and they want to focus on somebody else. So, it's not just the players, but kudos to the people that are around them.
Yep.
And for me, I'm looking at something else here because we could see some history made this year because either way, if Jokic wins this award, he's going to join the likes of Michael Jordan, Steph Curry, LeBron James, and Wilt. And there are others who have won this award in consecutive years. Now, if Giannis wins the MVP, he's going to join an elite club of just 9 players that have won this award at least 3 times. And of course, that's the likes of Kareem, that's the likes of Mike, that's the likes of LeBron. And in the case of Embiid, he could become the first 76er since Allen Iverson in 2001 to win the award.
That's right.
And, you know, and
He,
then,
well, he can
no,
you hear me, William?
yes,
Because I'm
yes,
having extreme
yeah.
technical difficulties. Yes, you know what? I'm a person. I like change. So I mean, if Embiid, continues to dominate and has his team in it healthy, and can stay healthy and roll, I don't see why he wouldn't be, the top candidate because right now he's my top candidate for MVP right now. Like I said who I like, but if we talking about who's been playing heavy right now, I mean, I posted some stuff the other day. This kid has been phenomenal lately. I take my hat off to him. He's been great.
Listen, I mean, Joel Embiid has been on a tear, and it's hard to, not pay attention to it, especially the way that he finished the first half of the season. Remember,
That's right.
he had a wrist injury in that game as well against Milwaukee, and he still went out there and balled out. But for my money, I'm just hopeful for Embiid that James Harden joins that team, and James Harden knows how to play off of Embiid and he doesn't try to take over. That's my biggest thing because the way that Embiid is playing, the last thing that you want to do is mess up his flow. To me, with Giannis and Jokic, it's going to be easy because with both of those teams, the people around them know how their bread is buttered. But
Right. Exactly.
we saw the ego of James Harden be a problem with the Brooklyn Nets.
Shaking my head, brother.
Right. And now, hopefully for his sake, he could check that ego in the door and look and see, listen, hey, I need to play off of this big fella in order to win. Because that's one thing. Since James Harden has been in the league, he hasn't played with a quote unquote dominant big fella. I mean, granted, KD 6'11, 6'10 in that range, but KD's more of a perimeter player. And of course, they had success, early on in both of their respective careers in OKC. But since then, James Harden had Dwight Howard, when he was in Houston for several
Right.
years. But Dwight had to adjust his game to D'Antoni's system.
Right. And that
And
didn't work too well.
right,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? So now, it's a situation where what are you going to do if you're James Harden when not only you're not the guy, but then on top of that, you got to play off of somebody else who can get points closer to the basket consistently.
Right.
So that to me is going to be the biggest thing. But if we were to make a pick right now, who would be your guy that's going to get the award?
I'm right now. I'm going with Embiid. I got Embiid.
I mean, I look at it, you to me, you can't go wrong either way. And I know there are going to be some writers that are going to say, well, Giannis has already won the award twice. Jokic got it last year. It's Embiid's turn. I understand that, but at the same time, you have to be fair and you have to evaluate. And I think one thing that is going to hinder Jokic in this aspect is his club's record, and that's no fault of his. But I think what's going to help both Giannis as well as Joel Embiid. They're playing in the Eastern Conference, so more
Right.
eyes are going to see them, especially in those prime time games. And of course, they're going to look at those head-to-head matchups that these two guys have respectively. Now, I will say this: the one thing that could hinder Embiid going forward is just what we mentioned. How is James Harden going to help or hinder the 76ers chemistry? But I'll tell you like this: if Joel Embiid, and this is nothing to take away from Giannis or Nikola Jokic or DeMar DeRozan or Ja Morant, but if Joel Embiid keeps playing like he is so far in the first half of the season, he's definitely going to get his first
Mhm.
MVP award. So there you have it, folks. As always, want to take this time out to thank Cal One to God for chiming in here on the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast. Cal, as always, it's been a pleasure. And
Thank
if
you,
you
William.
and if you folks liked what you saw and heard today, please feel free to hit that like button as well as the subscribe button to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. You can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So for Cal One to God, my name
Yes,
is
sir.
William Martin, signing off, saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.